Hey everybody, you are joining us for this conversation where we are going to talk about pivot, the shift from surviving to striving, really in any situation. We know right now we're in this pandemic, this crisis that coronavirus has paralyzed so much of the things that we would normally be doing. And we need to think about how to really react to this shift, to this crisis. And so anytime that a pivot is happening, there is an opportunity to go in a different direction using new things and going in a new way. Actually, sometimes the vision or the core values of who you are, the mission of who you are, does not necessarily have to change, but the way in which you might carry that out does. And so that's what we need to talk about. We need to figure out like how we're going to be different, how we're going to move forward. When I say move forward, I'm not talking about this notion of normal, this going back to normal. I'm not sure that whatever normal was will ever return again. And someone asked a question on a call this morning, is like, well, how long is normal even supposed to last? You know, I think whatever normal was, it's expired. So now it's time to live into the new normal, and guess what? That will expire too. You joined me. I am the Minister of New Church Strategies for the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. My name is Terrell, and I appreciate you joining the conversation today. I'm gonna make sure my conversationalists get a chance to introduce themselves so that you know who they are, and we're gonna jump right into this conversation.
Hey everybody, my name is Chaplain Jose Martinez. I'm the Associate Minister of New Church Ministry, and I'm glad to be here.
My name is Heidi Unruh. I am speaking to you from Hutchinson, Kansas. I am work with churches as a coach and a trainer. My personal mission statement is coming alongside people with good ideas so great work can shine. So I'm all about helping churches live out their mission, especially in connecting with vulnerable people in the community.
Great. I am Skjegstad. I'm coming to you from sunny Minneapolis, Minnesota, where it is not snowing today. We could not say that over the weekend. I'm also a consultant, an author, and a trainer. I work with churches on vision, strategic mission focus, and getting more connected to the community, and also fundraising and developing nonprofits.
Great.
Hello, everybody. This is Rosario Ibarra. I am from sunny California, Southern California. I am a relationship manager for the Cypress Church Extension Fund, but also I am a building and capital services advisor for the West Coast. I'm happy to be here with all of you.
Thank you, Rosario.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nathan Hill. I'm the pastor at University Christian Church in Hyattsville, Maryland. And we're a church in transformation, trying to figure out how to be faithful, how to embrace a diverse, growing community right outside of Washington, D.C., and excited to kind of glean and learn and share what we're going through in this time.
My name is Larry Groves. I'm coming to you from southwestern Indiana near Newburgh. The church I'm affiliated with is First Christian Church of Newburgh. I'm a volunteer there. I'm the program manager of our community impact team, where we are trying to make manifest the tuggings at our hearts for a number of years about how to become good neighbors in our community.
Hi, I'm Ruben del Plar. I'm the lead pastor of Community Worship Center in Gardena, California, and I'm excited to be here with each and every one of you.
All right. Thank you guys all for being here. This is going to be amazing. I'm really interested in making sure that we are able to offer some ideas about how we can live into a new future. You know, let's have this conversation this way. We want to address maybe some of the things that we used to do. Not that any of them were bad or good or whatever. It's just like this is the way we used to do church. This is how we've had to adjust here during the past couple of months, during the pandemic, this unexpected situation that we all have been thrusted into, and how we move forward. That may or may not look like going into a building, that may or may not look like assembling the way that we always have. We don't know what it looked like. No one really knows. And so but we do know there's some quintessential elements to who we are that we need to be able to take forward. And actually, I'd like to start the conversation kind of thinking about that. raising this idea of like, what is the church's mission? And can we fulfill that mission without a Sunday morning expression? I think everything that we've done before has been very, very focused on Sunday morning expression, getting to that one major service that we have once a week and pulling everybody together and inviting people to come to that. And now we've had to shift to taking that service and putting it online, putting it virtual, making sure there's people who never were on Facebook or never had devices and getting them in their hands so that they're able to enjoy our Sunday morning expression. So some people didn't necessarily change. They just took exactly what they did before and put it into a digital setting. And then they probably can't wait until they're able to move from that and go right back into that digital space again. And so this is an opportunity to say, well, what is our real mission? Like, what are we really supposed to be doing as a church? What is the core of who we are? And can we actually do that without a Sunday morning expression? And I wanted to get you guys feedback on that idea.
A key part of what the church is supposed to be is to help people build relationships with each other. So people in the body of Christ. And we can do that when we're in person, going to Sunday school or attending social events or in worship together. If we're not able to do those things, how would we build relationships? So, you know, I've been thinking a lot about interactive experiences and online, calling people on the phone, doing Zoom. I mean, being really intentional about who you're going to develop relationships with. And I would say right now, there are some people at my church that I'm talking to more than I was before, because I just run by them at church. Now we actually have to schedule a time, and it's harder. It takes more time. It takes more effort, but I feel like the quality of the relationships is higher. So I'm hoping that I can continue that even when I'm able to see people again, whenever that is in person.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to think about. Like, all of a sudden we had to all be told to wash our hands. And I kept thinking about, so why is someone getting on TV telling me to wash my hands? That's, I mean, like, I've already obsessively washed my hands, but now we're looking at doing that. And so then after this, are we going to go back to washing our hands less? No, I hope not. You know, so the same thing is with the ways in which we are engaging and connecting with each other. Hopefully that will keep going. Are you guys hopeful of that, or?
One of the things that, you know, I think one of the things that God was doing in our midst here at University Christian Church was really, even before this hit, we had just continued to have conversations about what we need to do to get where God is leading us and to get more nimble and open and creative and to do better with relationships. And so even before this virus thing was in the news or an inkling, we had last fall, I've been working with our elders, our spiritual caregivers in the church, to reorganize their ministry around, you know, groups of families, of individuals in the church to reach out to. And so what's one of the praise God's that we've been giving thanks for, because this stuff hit and we're asking, are we checking in with everybody? We see some people on the live stream, but here is a ministry that they've already began to do, to put into place, that already has begun to bear fruit. And we know has to continue. And so even this whole month of May, our focus has been sort of a conversation as a church about building community. How are you building community in your neighborhood, in your house, with your coworkers, with people that you can reach out to, as well as with church members? How are we building community, even with the limitations that we have on? Because we know, even though we can't be there physically, people need connection. People need to know that they're loved and they're cared for, and that we're praying for each other, and God is moving and at work in this community. So it's important for us to be able to connect those dots and continue thinking, where are the next steps on this?
You say continue. Were you guys, in your opinion, doing community or building community or being with others well before?
It was a hit or miss, like a lot of churches. We were in some ways at a plateau, in some ways, you know, sort of taking a back seat or just assuming it was happening. And so we're trying to move it toward, how are we doing this? How are we checking in? What is our strategy? And we're putting together a new church database for our staff and key leaders to be able to log in, to update people's information and make it easier to contact people. So even little tools like that to make, to make this process easier, make it part of who we are intentionally.
You know, I would like to add that it was funny because a few years ago I read articles about, because online churches have been for a long time, not a lot, but a few one. And I read articles in theological, newsletters, is an online community is really a church?
Right.
Yes, no, there was so much debate about it,
Yes.
And then the build is like the building is the church. Even when we say, oh, we go to the church, but sometimes we forget, and sometimes we worship the building. And then we realize that, hey, we don't have a building, but we still are the church. We are the people. Remember that. We know that, but sometimes put it in the back of our minds. That what are those discussions are back. Are we really a church? Yes, no. We have the answer, right? We are still a church.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for raising that, because I think there has been a pressure to say that a small church, or if you don't have a facility that you own, that you haven't arrived yet. But I know, Jose, you work a lot with this whole notion of micro church, and even some of the resurgence of home churches. What are your thoughts on that?
One of the key things that I've been talking to with a lot of groups of people with micro churches is this idea of how are they providing the pastoral care part of their ministry in their community. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So a lot of people during this COVID-19 stuff has been dealing with a lot of not only mental health issues, but spiritual health issues. So a lot of people grieving. They're suffering from ambiguous loss. They're dealing with disenfranchised grief or frozen grief, or, even in their complicated grief, there's different types of things like that. So how is the community reaching out to their congregants and providing that pastoral care? I would like to know here from the panel, the pastors, what are you doing to focus on that pastoral care? Pastor Ruben, you got anything to say to that?
I think it's really important. I don't know if you read, but there was a pastor recently that just committed suicide. And I believe it was in your neck of the woods, Nathan, in the East Coast. And I think one of the things that people fail to realize is that pastors are human too. And we go through ups and downs, and we go through depression, and we go through fears and all these things. And one of the things I've realized in this time is to really rest with my family. One of the things that at our church, I really feel the Lord has instilled in us was to bring the family altar back. I think we've stayed really busy as a nation, as a world, and we've gone in and out. And, those that are parents, you have little ones, and you have soccer practice and baseball practice and school and all these things. And when is there really time for the family? So for me, I think it's just really stepping back and saying, okay, taking time with my wife, my kids who are older, but, my grandson, having that time to kind of just really reflect has been a benefit and a godsend. I think, I don't believe God sent this. I don't believe this is, I just realized that, in this time, it's been a great time to reflect for families, for churches. And as Nathan said, it's something for us as far as community. God designed us for community. Adam was alone, and he created Eve out of Adam. And so because he was alone, and we are meant to be in community. I don't care what people say, the social distancing, I don't like it because we're meant to be in community. So how can we fix that? How can we go moving forward? I think one of the biggest things that we've used is Zoom, and I'm thankful for technology, because we've been using Zoom for the last 2 years. We've been doing Zoom classes. And so it was kind of like us kind of moving in. We've been doing online giving for the last 4 years. So it's kind of like 98% of our congregants give online. So we were kind of, I don't want to say I saw the future, but there's always change that comes. And so we just said, hey, let's do this. And other people were like, how can you do this? You're bringing an ATM machine in the church, which it wasn't. It was, but just moving towards technology. And now that we see this, it's actually been a benefit to us. Now I still miss the community. I still miss hugging people and speaking to people without a mask on. But these are things that we kind of have to move forward with care, but at the same time, going back to pastoral care, I just think it takes a lot of reflection, a lot of communicating with other pastors who I have several pastor friends that we just are real with each other. And we're continuing to pray for each other and encourage each other. I think that's something really important that we can't stop doing. We need to continue these conversations going forward because it just helps our sanity. And so I would say that.
Yeah, it seems like the intentionality is thrusted upon us here. Like we are very intentionally reaching out to others. But do you see that continuing once we're like, are we just starving to go back to the way things were? How do you all imagine that we can really continue to stay connected in the future? Let's say we're not able to connect or reconvene the way we once did for another year. Like a lot of people are waiting for July or June 15th or these dates that are very close. I think we should be thinking more infinitely, more further down the road. What would you say to any of that?
One of the tools that we can use is small groups. So again, this is something that, you know, we're not inventing with the current situation, but the ability to really develop community in small units. And I would say there's a pastoral care dimension to that as well. One of the tools we need to get better at is building teams for ministry. So, you know, this whole thing is pointing out lots of ways in which the church before was unhealthy. And we either get better or we get sicker. And so the over-reliance on pastors to be the channel for ministry, to do the ministry, the work of the church, that was unhealthy. And the weight of that just falling on pastors, you know, and when Joy and I talk about different ways that churches can engage in the community, one of the things we're really careful about saying is that this is not the job of the pastor. We don't want to overburden leaders even more with the burdens they're already feeling, but to build a team. And so the tool of a team as both a group, the bringing different skill sets together, different spiritual gifts together to do the work of the church, but then also the team as community, as a unit of community. So we're not talking about multiplying committees, but we're talking about multiplying small communities within the larger congregation that share the work of mission together and also share life together.
Yeah, my own small group meets weekly now, and we were lucky if we got together once a month before, because we have 5 little kids in our group, soon to be 6. None of them are mine, so I can play with them and then they go home. It's awesome. But now you can do it on Zoom. You know, you can put your kid down for a nap or have them crawling all over you while you're talking on Zoom. We meet for an hour, just check in, talk about prayer requests and pray. 11 o'clock on Saturday morning. So I'm thinking maybe that will continue. You know, we'd have the ability to do that maybe once a month and then meet in person once a month. So the other thing I think is keeping people engaged as volunteers and lay leaders during this time. So maybe it's a skeleton crew that's working on putting on your service, because that was what everybody wanted to do first. And that's important to have your service online, but you know, what are people doing that aren't able to do their regular church jobs right now? So what are your ushers doing? What are people who are part of the altar guild doing? And I'm not seeing that happen among my clients yet, where you're all sitting down thinking, what are the new jobs that we need? We know we need technology skills, but we also need people who are good at building relationships, you know? So yeah. For my own church, I'm proposing, let's have fun Saturday, every Saturday night. And we're gonna have, I don't know, joke night or cooking lessons with somebody at church. I mean, that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. We all be on Zoom and you kind of feel like you're there. It's not exactly the same, but anyway. Yeah, so I think keeping people engaged as volunteers is really important during this time too, kind of rethinking what volunteer roles could be.
Right, yeah.
Can I piggyback off what Heidi was saying? I think that's really important. One of the things that really liberated me was a scripture in Ephesians 4, where it says, now these are the gifts Christ gave the church: apostles, prophets, teachers. And the key verse that liberated me was verse 12. It says, their responsibility is to equip God's people to do his work and build up the church, the body of Christ. And I think I grew up, my parents were pastors for 39 years. So I saw them do everything. And so I thought, well, that's ministry. And I came in and God liberated me with the scripture and said, no, you need to equip the body. And so we've built a leadership team and we built teams. And that, again, goes to the pastoral care piece, because, again, I would not be able to do this on my own. And I refuse to do it on my own. But I think that's really important, that we need to equip. And part of us, we have the people that come and be a part of CWC, they take a personality and a spiritual gifts profile. And we want them to develop who God created them to be. And so we place them in areas that they're going to succeed. I think for so long, the church hasn't done that. And so for us, it's equipping people to do the work of ministry. Right now, as we're speaking, we're doing our grab and go lunch. I'm not there. I don't need to be there because we have a team that's equipped to do that. And they'll probably serve 200 people today, giving lunches, which they're doing every day, Monday through Friday. So I think that's so key. And that takes so much off my plate and my shoulders to have to work. So just thought I'd piggyback on that.
Hey, Pastor Ruben, how is that training, or that equipping going now through the online stuff? Are you guys having online classes? How are you equipping the future leaders right now?
Yeah, we moved swiftly to online right away when this when this hit. We kind of we're saying, okay, we're going to try to transition online. It took us a couple of weeks to kind of gauge how we would do this. But we have what we call our basics class online. We have our community groups, which are small groups online, Zoom. And I do a leadership institute, which we've moved online also. So we're continuing to build our volunteers and our leaders. We also, every Sunday, we started doing this a couple weeks ago, where we would do what we call a team rally. All those volunteers that were coming in for Wednesday service or Sunday service, we're doing that online now. They can't come to the church, but although we're still having service online, we're bringing them in via Zoom and doing a team rally. So anything that we can keep the people motivated and connected. I think that's the main thing. We're going 2 months without having a service on site is really difficult. So we have to kind of figure out ways to keep them connected. And so that's how we've been doing it. It's trial by error. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to figure this out. And so, it seems to be working. Now you have drop off, but again, that's what we've been trying to do, is just stay connected as much as we can online. We also use we have what we call text in church, and we're able to send a blast text to 1,000 people, and they're getting the text and it's information. My wife and I just did a video, a 30-second clip, and we sent it via blast text so that everybody can kind of just see what's going on. And so we're just trying different ways to see how this thing works out.
You going to take all that into the future? Is this going to set you up for a far distant future? Like, what is leadership development? How are the things you're doing now preparing you for healthy leadership development in your future?
I think it's I was doing it the other day and I said, wow, now I can train my leaders in New York at the same time. And so we're opening a campus in New York. And we were supposed to launch this fall, which is not going to take place as far as, in person, but we still have leadership. We still have community groups going on in New York. And so we're just going to be doing the same things. Matter of fact, I was watching a couple of churches, Elevation and some other churches, and their online presence is so massive because they've been doing this already. So we started doing pre and post service online. What does that mean? Is that I'll have a couple talk about, hey, the service is about to start. They're asking questions, pre and post. And I said, even if we do come back, we're still going to do pre and post. We're going to have an online church. We're going to call it Online Church. And we've been doing online for the last 4 years. It's not new to us, but we weren't intentional. I think that's the key word. Someone said intentional. We weren't intentional with, and the reason we did it was people that are in hospital, people that are sick, they couldn't come to church. We wanted to be able to give them that online experience. But now intentionality is someone is watching from another state that's a part of CWC. And, you know, so we are going to be very intentional with everything. Everything we moving forward will be offered online. Classes, you know, everything. Because again, we can't go back. We have to go forward. And so I think that's really important for us.
You know, this notion of, and Larry, I see you want to jump in here, this notion of participation. I've been trying to get churches to think not as your people who show up on, there's this thing that the people who show up on Sunday morning are my primary, most important, most committed participants. And if we think about the participants of our ministry being much larger than just these few folks who show up on Sunday morning, then we have a responsibility to how we pastor and how we minister with these other connections. And the same is true of the people who are in our communities. And I know, Larry, you do a lot of community work. How do you see that happening into the future? And also share whatever comments you wanted to say in response to Pastor Ruben.
Well, in terms of things that endure past this current season, the new circumstances have made people desperate about some aspects of their life, or they're unable to deal with those in ways that they were with the rest of the things when they were in stability. So out of that desperation, they're willing to allow us to come alongside them now when they wouldn't have been before. And we certainly expect those relationships to endure past this season, past the point when they've returned to stability.
Like what? Like what are you talking about?
I'm talking about families that were outside our tutoring ministry who are needing food. So we've switched to food distribution and collection. So you know, that's a way for us to engage with people with whom we would not have been able to connect with our prior ministries.
Yeah, that's good. I think that Rosario, did you have something? I know that Pastor Ruben, you have to be disengaging here for in a moment. Before you leave, can you tell us how to get connected with you? Tell us where to find your online church, or how we can tune in or anything like that.
I really appreciate this. And I just got the information from Jose. I apologize, but we have another meeting scheduled that I couldn't move. But yeah, you can find us at CWC Gardena, and we're on Instagram, Facebook. You can visit us online. That's the number 2, go to cwc.com. It should be .org. I don't know why we did .com, but go to cwc.com. And, you know, we're here again to lend a helping hand to whatever we can do to help the church as a whole. That's what we're here for. And we're learning and growing just like everyone else. So I appreciate you having me, and thank you. And I just got your email, so great. I'm going to go through all that. So appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. See you in the cloud.
Yes, sir.
Later, Pastor Room. I'm wearing the shirt. Masterpiece.
All right, great. Thanks, Jose. We'll see you, man.
Rosario, do you want to share?
I wanted to follow up on something Larry said. And he talked about being able to, you know, using the theme of pivot. So they had a tutoring ministry, and then being able to shift because they couldn't do tutoring in person. So shifting to food distribution. And to me, and then I know out of that food distribution, they've come, there's other points of contact that they're making, and they're talking about connecting with the families in some creative ways. But two of the I would say the kind of the strategies, success strategies, were one, they built a really strong relationship with the school beforehand. So it wasn't just like, hey, we're here to do this service for you, right. But really let the school know that they were there to be a partner with them. So if tutoring's what you need, then this is what we'll do. If food's what you need, then we'll shift to that. The other thing is the skill of listening. And I think that's another key ingredient in being able to pivot. So we can do all the technology that we want, but and we can, like, blast. I'm not, putting that down, but we can send out all the messages that we want. But if we're not also listening to the community, if we're not also listening to our congregation, we may be thinking that we're, hot stuff, but we're not really touching the need that's there, or we're missing some really important points of communication. So I think it's the combination of being intentional about building relationships, building partnerships, and then being intentional about listening and saying, so what's going on now? What do you need from us? How is this working? How do we need to change up on what we're doing in order to, this worked yesterday, this worked last week, but we can't assume it's going to work today or tomorrow. So what do we need to do now?
Well, Larry, help us with that. Help us think about listening in the future. Like, what do you imagine can happen to be better listeners, to better assess our community assets and tap into our human resources that are out there for greater, stronger partnerships? What does that look like tomorrow?
Well, it means not becoming complacent and thinking that you know what they need because you listened a quarter ago. You need to continue to listen as their circumstances change. Now, we got a little help because we attended a seminar that Joy and Heidi did a few weeks ago, and they gave us a nice gouge in the ribs where they said, go back to the basics, listen, ask questions, be relational. And frankly, it caused us to go back to the fundamentals, and that's been very helpful. So we've worked with our reps at the school, and we were surprised by a couple of things. One is we didn't realize they would have such a good handle on the needs of families, individual families, while school was out, but they did. Second of all, before this, we didn't realize the trust capital that we had with the schools, because we've not worked with them all that long, and it's been mostly in the context of tutoring, some back to school standalone events. We thought it would take us a very long time before we had enough trust built up to enter things like wraparound. They called us when school was sent out for the virus. They had some food available from a food bank for weekend use because the schools were no longer able to send food home for weekends. They called us and said, we don't know how to deal with this. We have this food coming in, needs to be delivered to several dozen families. Do you have any way you could help us with this? Well, we did. We took care of that. And then they began to share some other concerns, like our families are not able to make medical co-pays. So we converted some money into funding that the schools could use to support co-pays. When we distributed all the food that was available to them, we then shifted to food collection. So it's remembering to listen. Just because we knew the tune 2 or 3 months ago doesn't mean that we know what's going on now.
Yeah, I've been reading a lot about the way in which institutions and education is thinking about how they will reconvene or things like that. And there's all these parameters that they are looking into, especially the smaller class sizes. And I would not be surprised if those schools that you're connected to, if they have to go to smaller class sizes, would call your facility and say, we need more space. We have to now broaden out beyond our current facility, and we need a place for our students to be able to do so. Can we use your church to host our students, and so the expansion of our classrooms? That would be so amazing, a really great repurposing of our church buildings into the community beyond that which we use them. And a lot of them stay empty all week long anyway. So it's really great that we would have that opportunity. Joy, did you want to chime in here?
The reality is the community's changing around us all the time. So yeah, it's just much more apparent to us. And I think the kicker is it's affecting all of us. this change. So then we're like, man. So, you know, Heidi and I often say, we wish the church would leave the building, you know, so that the essence of who we are is not sitting in our facility facing all the same direction for an hour, for 1 hour a week. It's part of it. But now the church has had to leave the building, and we're out in the community, and we're figuring out what is really going on out there. So, I mean, that's something that I hope congregations will take into the future after this happens. And that some new relationships were built. I mean, Larry's talking about how an existing relationship was strengthened and how you kind of morphed it or repurposed it, or you're working together to figure out what to do. But you might find some new partners also. So I'm hoping that churches are like listening and encountering groups they didn't even know about before that they could work with in the future on community ministry.
Yes, we are. And one idea that we took from the webinar a couple of weeks ago was the phrase that said, even though the building's closed, the church is open. Now, we probably already had that mindset, but that slogan has been really valuable to solidify and unify the things that we're doing, and to crystallize the purpose of some of the food distribution things that we're doing. So that little slogan has been helpful to us as we've shifted the nature of the ministry that we do. Yes, it has led to some new connections. There's some local money that's available, and we've applied for a grant to operate this summer something we're calling a mobile pantry. So the families that were getting food during the school year, we're going to try to find a way to collect some food and distribute to them, and also household goods, cleaning supplies, those sorts of things, and do it on a co-op basis so that it's not completely a freebie. They participate financially to some extent, and there may be some little jobs in the apartment communities for them to organize and schedule the delivery and drop-off dates and those. And we're going to do the delivery on the church bus. So once a week, this thing is going to roll around in an organized fashion, make organized stops, and connect with people all summer long that are participating in this. So that's one new connection that we know we will make through this.
That sounds really good. The thing that I would kind of go back on is, with Joy's point of everything's changing, and the community was changing anyway, constantly. One of the key things I kind of want to bump back on is the pastoral care part. A lot of people's lives were changing in the first place before this COVID-19, and now that after this COVID-19, it's everybody's in the same boat with the change, and that sometimes some people found solace in the consistency of a church building and having that Sunday service. And so with part of the listening portion of it, I wouldn't discount the act of listening to somebody who's grieving that portion of, well, we no longer come together on Sunday mornings. I no longer get to shake a hand of, Fred or, Wilma or Barney or, that sort of thing, any of the Flintstones, and just honoring that and just allowing people that space to grieve for that, and then still prepare them to move forward, because we're not going back to the way things were. This new normal is going to look completely different of how we've been before.
I think that I agree with Jose that also we need the connection. I miss the human touch, in a way. Just hard, but even seeing the people. Even when I see a grocery store, it could be something silly, but, seeing the human people is like a different experience than just seeing on the screen. But on the other hand, we are forced, the church is forced in a way to change. But I think in Church Extension, we are working with all the churches, and also we try to help them how to figure out the ministry issues, building issues, finances issues. And sometimes we are working with the churches and telling them, you are the expert, you know what is happening in your community. We can tell you how this church is working with the homeless, how this church is partnering with other organizations, but you are the one who live in this community. So you are the one who need to look outside your walls and check what is the need in this community, how we can work together. So when needs arise, even the authorities know. I can go and speak with that pastor because he knows what is happening with the church, and I know I can count on him or on her because we can work together. So this is a great opportunity for the church to be challenged. What am I going to do in this community, whether I am big, medium, or small? There is a place for us. There is a place to bring hope, to bring different things, to cover the needs, to bring food, to bring other things, tutoring. How many things that we can do? And also it's a way that we can integrate other people that maybe they cannot go to church every week, but maybe, they can help with technology issues. They can call a person. There have many times, but several ways that we can, connect with people and know that you are cared, you are beloved, you are not alone. We are in this together. So that is the challenge for the people, right? We are always suffering the loneliness, but also trying to get connected.
The vision, and I really appreciate this continued call to leave the building. We certainly value the building. We're a University Christian Church. We're actually going through the Epiphany process through Hope Partnership, Church Extension, to revision, to do our future story, because we know we were a church plant in 1959 and have experienced some remarkable growth and exciting and incredible years of ministry. It's been such a gift, and we built so many relationships. So when I came to the church 7 years ago, one of the first things I did was try to put together some kind of vision for who we are and who we're called to be. And it's the church at the intersection, because we're at a physical intersection that's pretty high traffic. We're near a metro stop. We're near the University of Maryland. We're in the shadows of the Capitol building of Washington, D.C., of all these powerful, influential people and resources. We're in a very diverse place. Immigrants, people new to the country, people who are fighting for justice, for creation care, and it's just an incredible. There's so many lines of connection there. But this whole time has reminded us and taught us that the intersection is also virtual, that our intersection extends out. When we are doing a virtual choir, this time we had 60 people sign up, including family and friends. And when we got up there on the Zoom account for our instructions for how to do this, one of our church members, who still is a faithful giver, who lives in Japan, was on there. And it's sort of like, oh, okay, like we need to rethink all of this. And our church building is a tool. And right now there's homeless ministry happening there, and there's other resources happening there, and that will continue. But we're also having to dream really big. And I think that's our commitment too, is that we don't want to go backwards. We want to continue to see where this goes and where God leads us, and expand our online offerings, even when we're able to get back together and do the things that really we cherish together as a church. So it's a challenging place to be, but I know, and I'm grateful for my leaders in my church who have told me, Pastor, we're not going back. We're not going back. And so I think that's where God is leading us. And I hope God is leading many other churches of all different shapes and sizes in this time.
It was beautifully expressed, and it reminds me of something that one of the pastors said in a chat in one of the webinars that Joy and I did, and they said, trying to get their congregation to see that this very moment is why we've been gathering as a congregation this entire time. Mm. And so if the congregation can see that, that we're not just in a holding pattern until things get back to normal or get better, or we can do the things that we always did, but this is our most dynamic moment. This is why we exist, to speak hope to the world. Not because we're great at technology, but because we have a story to share, and that story sheds light on this experience. And that story also makes us more empathetic. So Rosario, as you were sharing, I was thinking about that this moment being an opportunity to have more empathy with people around the world who, don't, because we talked about and Jose, you talked about grieving the loss of the church and the church being able to go to the church building, and can that give us more empathy with those who have lost everything? Can it maybe make us more open to hearing the stories of refugees and seeing just a little bit of a glimpse of that in our own experience right now? That's something I'm hoping we take with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Rosario, I know you wanted to chime in there for a minute. Did you get your comment out?
Oh, that's fine. I can talk
Okay.
a lot more, but I want to give my colleagues talk more about it.
Yeah. Well, listen, I want to shift us. We're going to begin to wrap. I would like for us in this closing time to say a couple of things, and I'd like to hear from each and every one of you. Think about it like this. Describe first the church of 2020, okay? And then I want you to describe the church of 2030. All right, so jump into your prophetic imagination right now and really try to stretch. You have no limitations. You have infinite possibilities. What is the church of 2030 going to look like? And then when we look back on the church of 2020, for me, my three adjectives that I would use is that the church of 2020 is buildingless, digital, and connected. And when I think about the church of 2030, I see that church being, I don't know how to say this in a word, but less on earth. Like I can see us like forget not being able to connect to our neighborhoods. Like our connection is going to go completely unearthly, like really, really more far reaching than what we could even begin to imagine. And there will be some technology that will make this little thing called Zoom seem like a record player. So Zoom will be antiquated. We're gonna have some crazy technology that's gonna allow us to communicate intergalactically, and the gospel is gonna go far beyond that. That's what I can see as the church for 2030. And now my job, I feel like, is gonna be to bridge that gap. What can I do to say, forget 2020, it's here, it's great, we're loving it, but we have to think about what we're gonna learn now that will help us to go into the church of 2030. Who's ready for us? Who wants to chime in here and give their thoughts about that subject matter? Larry, let's hear it.
See the church of 2020 as going through a stage of molting. So we're discovering that our building is not the tool, it's a tool. We're discovering that we need to make relationships without a building. We're discovering we need to do mission outside the building. We're discovering that our traditions are not what is sacred, it's our message that is sacred. So for that, I'm using the metaphor of molting the building, shedding the building. 2030, I would see the church as the source of hope, that people would have learned the wisdom that they can't anchor hope to the economy or to politics or to government or to secular institutions. I don't know the mechanisms by which that may happen, but there have been times in human history when the church had a lot of influence and not much influence. If we are the church well during this season, we might inspire people to believe that we are the dependable source of hope out of all these other organizations and notions that are much more earthly.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Joy.
Well, I think right now we're still pretty tied to our buildings, like we're missing them. So I think we'll shift off that, and we're learning how to be digital, and still not super connected to the community. Many churches that Heidi and I encounter in our work are like, what's that? Pretty limited view of how you could be partnered in the community or how you could be connected. So I think in 2030, I hope that everybody who is able has slowed down their lives enough so that they have time to have friends at church. So one of my visions is that everyone who attends church would have at least one friend at church. So I think there are a lot of people who can't say that about themselves. I'm hoping that churches will throw out ineffective and old school programming and just be innovative and nimble in responding to the change around them. So that's one of the things I didn't even talk about during this time, is I think, this time is helping churches figure out, why are we still doing this particular thing? It doesn't even fit in the new normal, right. Or we were expending a lot of energy on that. We don't have energy right now because we're putting all our energy into being online until we learn how to do it. So anyway, my Church of 2030 is very relational, really tight community, and innovative, and ability to truly pivot to respond to community needs. Yeah,
the Church of Hope, the Church of Relationship, the Church of Innovation. Whom else do you want to offer their ideas about this gap that we have to bridge between the Church of 2020 and 2030? Pastor Nathan.
Yeah, I echo a lot of that. I think the church is in a weird place right now, and where parts of the church institutionally are struggling and are dying and are fading, and other parts are trying to innovate and grow and seeking new things, and it's uneven and it's back and forth. I mean, I know for my church, every time we take a step forward, sometimes it feels like we take 2 steps back in this process. And that's even for me as a leader. So I recognize that in some ways there's a lot that's comfortable in this moment for me. And I'm being called to do more, I think. And I'm being called to change myself first before I ask the church to make those hard choices. So in some of those ways, we still seek the comfortable paradigms right now, even though we are sometimes tinkering or sometimes taking these little steps of risk. So I think the Church of 2030 is going to be a collaborative church that rewrites these rules around denominations and church traditions, and finds new ways to be in relationship and collaborate with other faith communities, other organizations, and to heal, to bring healing, to bring hope, to be at the forefront of justice, of the work of justice. And I'm hoping by 2030 it won't be just a movement for justice. It'll be making that justice lived out, and taking the justice to the next step in a anti-racist society and world, and a world of equality and hope and peace. And so that would be a wonderful dream to live into. And I think the church will still be in it, but it will be collaborative in such a way that it'll be hard to tell where the church begins and ends.
Do you imagine that happening? That is there going to have to be another crisis in order for us to work together? Or can we actually start intentionally deciding we will work together and put some things in place to do so?
It's a great question. Now, I think at the local level, I think I've seen so much rewarding relationships, interfaith and across, and there's tension in there, and there's differences, and there's challenges. I'm real about that. And sometimes it's really hard, but I see so much fruit from that. So I just don't get why we can't take it further, and we can't discover how close we are and how much we have in common, and the work we do is in common.
Well, thank you so much. Rosario, we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think that 2020, we are a church in transition, obviously. We are in the learning curve, learning how to become digital. We're learning, we are even though challenge what to do. Some churches, as Ruben was telling, we are learning on the go. So we're still in that process, but also it's in a time of reflection, hopefully in a time of reflection. What do we need to, stop doing and start changing for moving forward? Well, church in reflection. So that's
Good, yes.
Well, I'm hoping that in 2030, nobody says we're going to go to church anymore. But we rather use the language of we're going to meet as a church. We're going to go do work together as a church. Or we're going to go and worship together, but not go to church. That's pet peeve. My vision is that the church of 2030 is no longer driven by fear of scarcity. I think we have this scarcity mindset that really affects what we perceive our influence is, as Rosario was talking about. We think, well, we can't do this because we don't have, or we're not as big as. But as we've been talking about, we've all been in the same boat. We haven't been able to access our buildings or our usual resources, and yet we see these wonderful examples of ministry thrive and blossom that we never would have imagined before. And that comes as we take stock of what we have and what we're called to do, not what we can't access at this moment. And so that putting on those asset-based lens. And just to give a real small example of that, from Larry's church, First Christian, and they were describing how they use their parking lot. They did a chalk obstacle course on the parking lot, so that kids from the neighborhood could come and go through, they set it up safely so that there was just, one family at a time, et cetera. But that the one family at a time, the kids could go through this chalk obstacle course. And so what do you do with a parking lot when you can't park cars there? Well, you make it a chalk playground for kids. And then we were talking about, they were sad, the grieving because they couldn't do their annual dinner for tutors and their families. And somebody said, well, maybe we could use our parking lot and, do kind of a chalk thing. And it's that one little thing at a time. Well, we could do, or we take what we have and maybe not even do something like, huge, big, different pivot, glamorous thing, but just take what you're doing and just move it one step further. So if you've got if you found a way to connect with your members that you weren't doing before, maybe take that one step. That's an asset. A connection grid is an asset, and take that one step further and say, well, could we add names to that list to call and check in on that are maybe not from our congregation? And then could we maybe add, caregivers in the community and first responders, and maybe take these skills that we've developed in checking in on people and maybe check in on them, even though they're not part of our congregation. So I'm hoping that that's how the shift happens little by building on what we already are doing.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So I guess I'm the last one. So the way I would describe the Church of 2020 is number one, vulnerable, chaotic, and full of potential. So in the 2030, I would like to see the church be kinetic, meaning having lots of movement within it. Resilient, it's going to be resilient, because I do believe there's going to probably be another thing that we'll have to face as a community together, which will put us at another vulnerable position. And then I hope the church will be, excuse this word, viral. I want it to be viral. So we may not have the same paradigms as we do now, you know, these big grand churches and everything else like that. But I do hope smaller communities that are active, that are resilient, that are basically showing the love of God and living out the gospel in their lives. That's what I hope.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that, you know, all this sounds good. I'm wondering even about, you know, Heidi, what you said in this notion of a church in the future not having so much scarcity. Do you imagine that the church of the future is abundant? Is that how we get out of our scarcity?
I think what Jose just said is very wise, that our abundance comes in the midst of our vulnerability, that it comes in the midst of lament and acknowledging our need. And that's part of what enables us to connect in meaningful ways. The collaborative piece that Nathan was bringing, because when it's not like, well, I've got it all together, so let me help fix you, but rather we are in a place of brokenness in literally like the things that we thought we had to break that open so that something new could grow out of it. And you're in that situation too. So how can we walk together in this? And then that's where we discover the abundance that was there all along that maybe we missed. The abundance that comes from just crying out to God and seeking the Spirit, and abundance that comes from sharing the, you know, we look and we see all we've got left is 2 loaves and 5 fishes, and but you know, what I've got is yours, because heck, it's not enough to feed me, so I might as well share it.
Well, I don't know, because like what Jose is saying, it speaks to those 2 V words that he says when you talk about vulnerable. Then that took someone saying, you know, I will give my all for the betterment of the good, or for the betterment of this system. And that little meal went viral, you know, so that is a great example of exactly what Jose is challenging us to think into is, you know, there are assets and resources that we have right now that can be maximized and exponentiated to grow far beyond what we could even begin to imagine. And now is the time to walk forward with that. I thank each of you for this conversation, to be able to do that. I want to, in our closing, just really kind of offer a quick little paradigm. This is being hosted by New Church Hacks, which is a ministry of New Church Ministry. We do webinars and all these different things. And I want to give you really quick 6 little hacks. They're actually not that little at all. What I want to do is help you think about anchors for advancement. As we are moving from the 2020 church to the 2030 church and the 3030 church, what are the anchors of advancement that we need to hold on to go into a more productive, more thriving, more striving future? And the first of that is Alpha. I want us to think about our beginnings, that we began with Adam, and God said to Adam, be fruitful and multiply. Then came Noah after the crisis of the flood, and God told Noah the same thing, be fruitful and multiply. And then the apostles came along, and God said, hey, I'm going to be with you, but I need you to go and make disciples and do all of these wonderful things. And so that was an initial thing that God told us. And then God had to come back in Revelation and remind us, like, now you remember I told you, go back to your first love. That's where I fought you kind of here. So remembering Alpha, remember the very first thing that we are charged to do and that God has told us to do. Number 2 is aspiration. During this time where we are not feeling so hopeful and we're kind of dismal and we're kind of down upon ourselves, is a time to remember when we did have vision and did have dreams. Those visions and dreams are still a part of who you are. They're still down in there. We need to grab a hold of those aspirations and walk them forward and really live into the imagination. And sometimes you need a tool to think about, what do I need to do today in order to set the proper future in 3020, not just focus on today. Number 3 is actuation. We need to move from ideation to actuation. It is no longer time to just sit up and think about all these wonderful things that we could do. Now's the time to actually put into place what we will do. Get to moving. The first word in the Great Commission is go. And you may not feel like getting, but I think some of you are actually building up the potential to want to get out there and do some things. Now is the time for actuation. Number 4 is agility. This is showing us that we can change quickly. We don't need a million committees and a million votes and all these things to figure out how to do the change. If we stay agile, then whatever comes our way, we will be able to change swiftly and quickly and move, because like that's already been identified here, the community is going to change around you. The world is going to change around you. Technology is going to change. Everything is going to change. Anything not changing is dead. So we might as well as remain agile so that we can move with the changes. Number 5 is adaptability. So being able to actually realize that some things are just better when they're made better. There's a difference between innovation and adaptive behavior. Innovation says, hey, this is better because it's new, where adapting says this is better because I've improved upon it. If we keep that mentality that we will constantly be working to make things better, whether that means make them new or some upgraded version of them, we must remain adaptable. And the last one is anti-fragility. There are some things that will continue to hit us, and as we do so, it's not always about making ourselves robust to where we're protected from the external influences and stimuli. Sometimes doing that, we just actually make ourselves more fragile, and something hits us and then we break and we crumble. There are some churches that won't survive this because of just how fragile they were. How can we be anti-fragile to the sense that when things hit us and things come our way, that we actually improve, that we get better? So let's think about this time in an anti-fragile mentality to say, now as a result of this, we're going to have more hope. We're going to be more viral. We're going to actually be more living into more abundant and less reliant upon our assets and our buildings and all these things that weren't quite serving us the way that they could have before, and really push into a future that will help us to advance. All right, we love you. We're here with you. All of our ministries are available. Real quick, everybody unmute yourself and tell us how we can connect with you. And we'll make sure that when we get this posted, people will be able to do that. Nathan, how can people get a hold of you and learn of your ministry?
Sure, go to uccmd.org, uccmd.org, and you can contact us there and find us on social media.
All right, great to have you today. Pastor Larry.
Go to the website fcnewburgh, NEWBURGH.com, and there are links there to staff and to our community impact ministry.
I love how no one is giving physical addresses for ways to find you. Heidi, how can we connect with you?
So I popped my email there onto the screen. So unruhheidi@gmail.com, and just invite conversation. I always like to hear what people are doing, because it might, because I know nothing except what I learn from others. And so love conversation. And maybe Joy can talk about some of the coaching we do together.
Right now we're working with churches on pivoting during this time, particularly around how to best serve the community. So we do have low-cost coaching available to you. I put my email up on the screen as well, so you can email one of us if you're interested in that. We'll talk you off the ledge, help you think about new partnerships, help you repurpose your ministries now. Yeah, it'd be all good. So, or just email one of us with your new ministry ideas. We're just interested in collecting those if you've come up with something really interesting.
Fantastic. Thank you guys both. Rosario.
Well, you can check on me on www.disciplescef.org, CEF for Church Extension Fund. And my email is Ibarra@disciplescef.org. And also, I love to hear church stories, because that is a blessing. I think that I'm like I always go visiting congregation and telling the stories. I love that.
Good, good. Pastor Jose.
Well, they can find me where they can find you. newchurchministry.org.
Yes. We're happy to serve you. Our mission is to teach, equip, assist, and multiply emerging and affiliating congregations. And we're here to help us move into the church of 3020. We will see you there. Thank you for the next installment, which is on June 3rd of New Church Hacks, where we will be talking about managing change. So some of this might be very important for that conversation as well. We'll be uniting with the United Church of Canada for that conversation. So please go to newchurchministry.org to find us and get all of our great content. We love you and God bless.
Bye-bye. God bless you.